I extend my humble greetings to the May 18 Memorial Foundation, the organizer of the Gwagnju Asia Forum, to our distinguished representatives from various sectors around Asia, to my fellow youth session participants, and to all our partners for human rights. I am humbled to have been given the opportunity to present my essay, A Filipino Perspective on Civil Society and Human Rights, to the forum session on Emerging Voices, Challenges to Democracy and Human Rights in View of the Youth. Allow me to start my discussion on giving a background on the complex political history of the Philippines. Scholars would often make a timeline dividing the nation's history in four categories: the pre-colonial period, the colonial period under the Spanish, American, and the Japanese, the post-colonial period from the 1946 Declaration of Independence until the Marcos dictatorship, and finally, the period of returning to democracy from 1986 until the present. Throughout these periods, the Filipino youth has always served as a catalyst for social reforms. As a country that is dominated by a youth population of more than 55 million people below the age of 25, the Filipino youth is expected to cultivate an active role that promotes leadership and values the importance of a functioning civil society. In the Philippine context, the term civil society strikes quite close to home, for it has been a foundation of numerous events that shaped the country on what it is today. As early as the beginning of the Spanish colonization, up to the present post-colonial independence, Filipinos have been going against various forms of oppression and have been standing up to the numerous injustices that have been directed to its people. Interest groups had emerged long before post-colonial times. The natives starting to go against the Spaniards was a form of mobilization against an oppressor. With this, we can say that civil society existed long before the term was even formally coined. Fundamentally, civil society is considered as a community of citizens linked by common interests and collective activity. The term civil society generally is used to refer to social relations and organizations that are external to control of the state or the government. It can also be considered outside the economic or business sphere as well. Usually, civil society refers to non-governmental organizations or NGOs and associations that people belong to for social and political reasons, such as church groups, community groups, youth groups, service organizations, interest groups, and academic institutions and organizations, among others. It also refers to the activities of these organizations. Though independent of the governmental structure, these organizations frequently become involved in political activities. It is not uncommon that these groups influence governmental decision-making and often consulted regarding public processes. As such, the establishment and maintenance of a healthy civil society is extremely important for the successful development and operation of democratic political systems. Once civil society has been eliminated, the path to retrieve it is very slow. It can be aided significantly by outside assistance by international NGOs coming in and helping the local people start parallel organizations of their own. Initiating training or inexperienced organizations in organizational and advocacy skills can be helpful, as can training in goal setting, option analysis, and conflict resolution. Yet, it is important that organizations be able to form in their own way to meet their own needs. They should not simply be little models of outside organizations that work in different places and different cultures. Although civil society exists independently of the state, it is dependent on the state's acceptance to be able to grow and flourish. People must have the freedom to associate, to speak freely, to publish, and to participate in social and political processes without fearing repercussions. Without such freedom, civil society will be stunted at best. It is a strong foundation in the formation of democracy and liberation for the Filipino people. During the dictatorship of Ferdinand Marcos, that lasted for more than 2 decades, the Filipino youth was not deterred to participate in social movements that advocates democracy and human rights. Over the years, mobilization to protect liberal democracy has transpired. Election watch campaigns, as well as peaceful revolutions have emerged, one after the other, drawing many supporters in the Philippines by means of constructions that inspire oneness among Filipinos, notions of universalist leadership, equality, and the inalienable rights of people have instigated this peaceful revolution. After the end of the Marcos regime, the role of the youth was further institutionalized as the new constitution paved way to the establishment of the National Youth Commission, a government agency that promotes the youth agenda and provides opportunities for youth representation in both domestic and international affairs. It is therefore my understanding that human rights can be protected and enhanced as the youth continues to engage and further strengthen its participation to civil society and the government decision-making process. As part of the civil society, the youth should find ways to check, monitor, and restrain the power of political leaders and state officials. Civil society actors should watch how state officials use their powers. They should raise public concern about any abuse of power. They should lobby for access to information, including freedom of information laws, and rules and institutions to control corruption. As a reiteration, civil society groups and organizations are platforms for the Filipino people to express their concerns on matters that should be attended to by the higher authorities. It is a voice, a microphone of Philippine democracy, and has been able to serve the Filipino people effectively for the past years. In our discussion, I try to shed light to the reality of mobilization and civil society groups, its history, its importance in relation to human rights, and the reason why civil society groups still exist today. Because these groups act as instruments that amplify the pleas of the ordinary Filipino to be heard, and therefore these should be thoroughly examined as part of a thriving democracy. With that being said, allow me to end my speech by sharing a timely quote from Martin Luther King Jr. that reminds us the significance of youth participation towards the upliftment of civil society and human rights, as well as give us a motivation to continue serving amid the challenges we face during these uncertain times due to the coronavirus pandemic. And I quote, "Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others?" Thank you very much for listening.